So next, I'm going to introduce a new measure, and this measure is gonna let us control the length of period we want to include in the variable. So basically, this measure is called the DateStart. It controls the starting date in the variable. So if you have, say, you want to include a period of 1 month in the variable, so in that case, the starting date should be 1 month ago relative to the current date. Okay. If you want to include the entire 1 year in the variable, then you should have this starting date being a date 12 months ago. All right. So, and that starting date should be somehow connected with your choice on this period slicer. Okay. So, for example, again, if you actually choose this 12 months period, then the starting date will automatically become the date 12 months ago relative to the last date in the sample. Okay. And if you somehow choose 1 month in the slicer, then that basically tells the measure to calculate the value of the starting date, which should be
1 month ago
relative to the last day of the sample. Okay, so that's what I'm going to do. So I'm going to construct this new measure under this historical daily table. So click on this table and then go to this new measure, and I'll just paste my code here. I define a measure called DateStart, and well, I need to make some small changes here to accommodate what we have here on the slicer. So instead of custom, I should have all as the last option. So here, let me explain what this code is doing. The first step, I define a variable called cho, stands for choice. Okay, so I use this selected value function. This function works on this period column under the period table. So basically, remember this slicer is showing this period column. All right. So selected value is basically returning whatever choice you made on this slicer. So if you choose this 12 months, then this text of 12 months is gonna be returned as a value of this child, okay, choice variable. Okay. If you choose, say, 3 months, then this text of 3 months is gonna be returned as a value for this variable. Okay. Next step, we define another variable called last day. We are using a function called last date, and this function works on this historical daily table date column. All right. So basically, I'm taking the entire date column, and the last date function is gonna find out what's the last date in that column. All right. So, well, our sample period can range from like 10 years ago to the current date. So if that's the case, the last date function is going to return the very last date in your sample, which is the current date. Okay. If your sample starts from again, a different example, March 31st, 1998 to, say, September 20th, 2023. Okay. In this case, historical daily date is gonna have this long column containing all the dates in your sample, and the last date in this column is gonna be September 20th, 2023. Okay, so this date, the last date in your sample period, which is captured by the date column in historical daily, is gonna be returned as the value for this variable called last day. Okay. Again, this last day helps you to retrieve the starting date, right? You need to, for example, if your last date is September 20th, 2023, and you choose this 1 month as the period, then 1 month ago is gonna be August 20th, 2023, right? So starting date should be August 20th, 2023 to show a period of 1 month, so that it's gonna end at September 20th, 2023, which is the last day of your sample. Okay, if you choose say 12 months, then because your last day in your sample is the September 20th, 2023, then the starting date, which is 12 months ago, should be September 20th, 2022. Okay, so again, this last day is also important to help you figure out what's going to be the start date for the V-rule. The third step, we use this switch function to figure out which is going to be our starting point. Okay, so again, switch function is going to work on this choice variable. Okay, and depending on which value the choice variable takes, switch function is going to return a different value. Okay, so if the choice variable takes this value, 1 month, basically if the user chooses this first item on the slicer, then the switch function is going to return the following. Okay, it's going to use this date add function. This function works to kind of change the first argument to a different date. Okay, so the first argument of this date add function is the last day variable. Again, this is going to be the last date in your sample period. Okay, so if you have chosen 1 month, then the date add function is going to move the last day kind of backward by 1 month. Okay, so the second argument is basically a increment for the change. If you want to move the last day backward, it's going to be a negative number. Okay, if you want to move the last day forward, which is in the future, okay, that number should be a positive number. So now, because you're trying to decide the start date, the last date is going to be September 20th, 2023. Again, for example, then the starting date should be 1 month ago, which is August 20th, 2023. So you're moving the last date 1 month backward. So we're using a -1 to make this change. And this is the magnitude of increment, but what's going to be the unit of increment? So the unit is defined by the third argument. I want to move by 1 month. Okay, so you use month here. If you want to move backward for 1 year, then this should be a year in the third argument. Okay, so by doing this, I'm basically moving the last day of my sample backward by 1 month. In this case, the starting date is going to be August 20th, 2023. Okay. Alternatively, if the user chooses 3 months as the choice variable, okay, then again the date add function is going to change the last day. It's going to move it backward by 3 months. Okay, so that's how this date add function works. This becomes more kind of, I guess by now it's become more clear. If the choice variable turns out to be 6 months, then the date add function is going to move the last day of this data sample by 6 months. All right. So in this case, this data add function is going to set the starting date 6 months ago. Okay. So again, if the last day is September 30th, September 20th, 2023, then the starting date should be 6 months ago relative to the last date. Then it should be March 20th, 2023, right? So this date add function is basically moving September 20th, 2023 6 months backward to reach March 2023. Okay, so that's the March 2023 is going to be returned as the starting date. Okay, so similarly, if you want to get the starting date, which is 12 months ago, then use the date add function and move the last day by 1 year backward. All right. So this choice, if the user somehow choose year to date, that means the starting day should be the very first day of the year. Okay. So what this function is doing, the start of year function is basically taking the first day in the year, okay, relative to this last day. So if the last day is in, say, 2023, then start of year function is gonna figure out, okay, the last day, this last day is September 20th, 2023. So basically, I'm supposed to take the very first day of 2023, okay, January 1st, 2023, basically, okay. So that's how the start of year function works. And if the user somehow choose the last choice, or okay, the user wants to have the entire sample period. So then the starting date should be the first date of this entire column, date column. All right. So basically, this switch function looks at what the user's choice is on this slicer, and depending on the user's choice, will return the starting date for the zero to work. Okay, so depending on which particular period you're choosing, this function, well, this matter actually is gonna define the starting point on the x-axis. Okay, so once the starting point is decided, then you will have the period that you would like to see. So finally, after the switch function returned the starting date according to the request made by the user, the value of this starting date is going to be returned, okay, as the value of this matter called DateStart. So there's one thing I need to emphasize a little bit. So here, actually, I made a small mistake. For the all choice, we should return the starting date should be the very first day of this sample period. Okay, so I use the first date function, and this function works on the historical daily table date column. Okay, however, it's important to actually use the all function on this date column first before I use the first date function. Okay, why is that? Because we are defining a mirror, and this mirror is going to be shown in a zero. And on the zero, on the x-axis, there's going to be different dates. Okay, and if I do not have this all function, the particular date on the zero is going to have a implicit future context. That future context is going to affect which date we're talking about in this historical daily date column. All right. For example, if the particular point on the x-axis is, say, March 30th, 2023, so without all function, this historical daily date is only going to take that particular date, March 30th, 2023. Okay, then the first date function working on this one single day, well, we'll just return that single day. Okay, so that's not what we wanted. Okay, we do not want to just focus on a particular data point and figure out what's the first day of that date. Okay, there's no point of doing that. We actually need to look at the entire date column in the historical daily table and take the very first date of that column. So because all this matter definition has an implicit future context which is embedded in the zero, we need to be very careful when you handle this type of matter definition. So the all function is needed here, because once you have the all function on this date column, then that means we're going to ignore the future context. Okay, we're going to focus on the entire date column when we calculate the first date. Okay, so yeah, that's the important point I want to stress. So here I have this all function added. Fortunately, I already have this all function here when we define the last date, so that's good. All right, we actually need this all function to make sure we are looking at the entire date column before we actually get the last day from that column.